Alright, what's going on, guys? We're getting pretty close, coming up on about a week since the launch of Elden Ring Night Reign. And I gotta ask, how are you guys feeling about it? I have been thoroughly addicted to this game, playing it pretty much non-stop, every chance I can, and all I want is more content. Yes, I do have a few gripes with the game, hoping they fix some things down the line, but it looks like we're in luck, because Elden Ring has just announced a new major update coming to the game a lot sooner than we were expecting, and with more content than we were expecting. And they're also reaffirming the DLC that's going to be coming out later this year. So we have quite a bit to break down here. But as always, if you want to stay up to date on all things Elden Ring Night Reign, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, and now let's get into it. So ever since Elden Ring Night Reign first dropped, people have been pretty vocal about not only problems with the game, but feedback to make it better, what we like about it, what we don't want to see down the line, and things as such. And already in the first week, we've gotten patch 1.01.1, which made some pretty significant adjustments to solo mode, which was one of the biggest criticisms in initial reviews, stating that it was way too hard to play the game by yourself, so they added 1 revive per run and increased rune drops. We also see that they made it easier to obtain higher rarity relics when reaching Night 3 or purchasing the mystery ones from the Jar Bazaar. So what this shows us is that not only is FromSoftware listening to community feedback, they are actively implementing it into the game in a very timely manner. But one of the biggest questions on everybody's mind right now, as many of us have killed the final boss and are working through the game on other characters, completing all the remembrances, getting the alternate endings, and all of that, is what is the post-launch support of this game going to look like, because the framework that we have is about as prime as it gets for a game that can continuously get content updates in addition to the paid DLC that they're already selling. And with this new announcement, it looks like that is going to absolutely be the case, because we just got this new announcement from Elden Ring stating that Elden Ring Night Reign has reached 3.5 million players, which in the first week, that's pretty good, especially since Night Reign is such a divergence from the typical FromSoftware game that everybody's used to. I'm happy to see it. But the really interesting part came in the comments that they left under this, which read as follows: "But the night is far from over. In addition to the DLC releasing later this year, new additions will be gradually implemented, including enhanced fights against existing Night Lords starting this month, as well as duo expeditions at a later date. Thank you for your support." Okay, so there's a lot to break down there, but first off, this does confirm that they're going to have a gradual content drip until the DLC. Now, I don't think this is going to include any new Night Lords or new Night Fares. I think that's going to be exclusive for the DLC, as we'll talk about in a bit, but they did list some interesting things, which honestly, I'm very surprised to hear this because of the complaints that some people have been levying. But let's take a look at the first thing they listed here. The first piece of new content they mentioned in this tweet was enhanced fights against the Night Lords. Now, what in the world does that mean? Well, one of the complaints that some people have been mentioning is that in general, the Night Lords are a bit too hard. Now, personally, I would disagree with that pretty heavily. I think in a game like Night Reign, the Night Lords have to be hard. You know, you've only got 8 of them. Why would you want them to be easy? You need them to be hard so that the game lasts longer, you get more out of it, and it's worth the money you paid. Now, are the bosses hard? Absolutely. These are some of the hardest fights FromSoftware has ever cooked up, but you have 3 people fighting it. And I think honestly people are kind of exposing themselves for getting carried by co-op back in Elden Ring, because as soon as we have bosses that can actually handle the optimization for co-op, all of a sudden we can't do it. But now it's about to get even harder with these enhanced fights. Now, what exactly does enhanced mean? Well, we weren't given any specifics, but I highly doubt that just means more health and more damage. These Night Reign bosses are already much more creative than what we saw in the base game. There's more going on in these fights than simply dodge the attack and hit the boss. For example, like we see with Libra here, and breaking the sigils while he has the protective shield. And so I think that creativity is an indicator of what these enhanced versions are going to be like. I think this will be much closer to the inner versions of bosses we got in the free update of Sekiro, where Inner Genichiro and Inner Ishin were tougher fights overall, and had a few new moves that were tricky enough to where it could throw off the rhythm of the fight. Maybe they also do something like take away the boss's elemental weakness, make them much harder to stagger, make the fight begin in phase 2, something like that. So I do hope they innovate in that regard rather than just making the fight harder with some superficial elements. Also, I do think we're going to get some kind of new reward for beating the enhanced version, likely some new form of relic, and there's some data miners suggesting that that's going to be the case based on what they've found while digging around in the game's files. Regardless, there has to be some kind of reward for doing it. So when is this actually dropping, and what's the rollout going to look like? Well, the post says that these enhanced fights will be starting this month. Now, what does that mean? Well, I think they're probably going to do a slow roll of these, maybe one every few weeks, with the first dropping here in a few weeks, and I'm super excited to see what they do with these. Some people have claimed that there are unused third phases, OSTs, that are not currently in the game. I have not confirmed that for myself, but that would make sense if these new enhanced versions are these so-called third phases with new OSTs, but I'm sure we'll hear more about that in the coming weeks. The other confirmed announcement from that post was a duos mode. Now, we did hear about this from the director a while back. This needs to come out as fast as possible. Why the game did not ship with the duos mode is beyond me, and they claimed it was a simple oversight in the development. The problem is, the game already has scaling for duos. If you have a third person and they leave, the game will scale accordingly to balance for the lost player. The game will simply not let you matchmake with only 2 people. Why is that? And why does it sound like that's going to take a while to actually come out? I've done a few runs now where we had a third person leave, and it felt fine. And I've had a lot of runs where I wish a third person would leave, because they're only dragging down the team. Now, for this to be causing issues with matchmaking, making it harder for solo queuers to find a team of 3, I don't really think that's a fair argument anymore, because every time I've tried to queue in with a party of 2 to find a third person, it takes forever. 3.5 million night fares, they claim, and yet I'm sitting here in queue for 15 minutes trying to find one. I don't understand it. It's 2025, no duos mode, no crossplay. We should not be having these issues, and this should not take more than a month to roll out, when the game already functions perfectly fine with a party of 2. But anyway, that's what they claim. Hopefully it doesn't take too long. I'm glad it's coming. Really should have been here on day 1 though. But now let's take a minute and discuss the DLC for this game. We already know a little bit about it from an interview with Ishizaki a while back. Even before release, they confirmed that DLC was going to be happening, and confirmed that in that DLC we will get new Night Lords and new Nightfarers. Now again, no specifics in that regard, but we can speculate a little bit based on things we've heard in the past. And my mind goes back to this interview with Ishizaki where he talked about the classes, and he mentioned one specifically as an example of what they couldn't include with the base 8. And when talking about that, he describes a class like a macho wizard, which would be interesting to have a sort of magic tank build as a Nightfare. That would fill a good gap in my opinion. Another that's seemingly missing from the game is a faith-based build. Now, while Recluse can play faith just as well as magic, I could easily see us getting a Nightfare in the DLC that's a sort of cleric build that specializes in faith and things like maces or hammers. But what other new Nightfares do you think we'll get in the DLC? As for new Night Lords, we don't have anything to go off of, and they seem to be pretty hard to predict. But like I said, I think the biggest problem in this game is the lack of Dark Souls bosses. Whatever's coming in the DLC, please add more of those. The base Night bosses definitely need more variety. I am sick of fighting the same ones over and over again. We can also pretty much guarantee that Shadow of the Erdtree content will be coming in the DLC. We're missing the weapons and field bosses from that, and I'm sure that's a very simple thing to port. But how are y'all feeling about this new announcement of new content coming to Nightreign? I'm super excited to hear this. I'm glad they're doing a bit of a slow rollout leading up to the DLC, giving us more stuff to do. And I think that's exactly what this game needs. And I really hope Duos comes a lot sooner than they're making it sound, but I'm just glad we're getting it in the first place. Anyways though, if you enjoyed today's video, be sure to leave a like on it and subscribe if you're new around here. And with all that, I will catch you in the next one.